What's up guys, it's Zyger here, and let's face it, The Legend of Zelda is by far one of the most legendary video game franchises of all time. And everyone has their favorite Zelda games, those ones that they grew up with and love to recollect and share their memories of, as well as titles in the franchise that they don't like as much and like to ridicule. So I wanted to address that today by putting together the ultimate Legend of Zelda games tier list. So in this video, I'm going to rank the Legend of Zelda mainline games from S tier to, let's just say, abysmal tier. And in the process, I'll share with you my memories of these games, most of which I have played, as well as little tidbits that help you know where I'm coming from and whether you should play these games today. But before I do that, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment below letting me know which game in the Legend of Zelda franchise is your favorite. Alright, the only thing I want to say before we get started is if I put two games on the same tier, so let's say I put Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages on the same tier, the one to the right will be the one that I think is better than the other ones on that tier. So if I did this, I would consider Ages better than Seasons. So that's the only thing I wanted to say before we get going, so let's do that. So number one, Zelda. The Legend of Zelda, the original, the tried and true NES classic, such a nostalgic game. I grew up playing it. I was very young when it came out, but it is one of the first games I ever really remember playing. And it was so innovative in so many ways. The open world exploration was something very few games had done in the past. You could say that Adventure did that on the Atari 2600 and maybe a few others, but it truly was a breathtaking new experience that gamers hadn't seen, and it's an amazing game. I mean, collecting the items, progressing through dungeons, using items to get you different places that you couldn't go before. This one laid the groundwork for the whole series. I'm sure the fact that it started it all will cause some people to favor it higher than I will, but I still give it immense credit. There is also people that will argue that it's the best video game of all time, and it'd be kind of hard to argue with them too for those reasons, but I can't quite rate it as highly as some would. So I think I'm going to put this one in excellent tier. And I reserve the right to change that based on weighing other games in relation to each other, but I think this is an excellent game. Definitely an above average Zelda. Fantastic game. One of the best NES games ever, probably. And now we get to Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. And this is a polarizing one. And in a way, I totally understand it because this one changed the Zelda formula quite more than a lot of people expected, especially when this came out. People expected sequels to essentially echo, or at least, kind of echo a similar experience that they got from the original title. But The Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, really kind of threw a wrench into that whole expectation because this one was more of a side-scroller. There was RPG elements to it, which I absolutely loved. I love to be able to kind of progress my magic or my power. The special attacks were so cool in this one, where you get kind of the upward stab or the downward stab, fire, turn into a fairy. There were a lot of cool things in this one that other Zelda games didn't do in terms of the attacks. I love the dungeon layouts, but the thing that I like most about Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link is the fact that it was so dark. This may have been Zelda at its very darkest, dark story, and I absolutely loved it. I love the Zelda titles that went more in that direction than the more lighthearted ones, and this is an excellent example of a great game that does a dark story well. If you've watched my top 10 NES games of all time, you know how much I love The Adventure of Link, and I really love the music in it too. I think that the music also added to kind of that dark atmosphere they were going for. I'm putting this one in S tier, and I know you guys are going to think I'm crazy rating it higher than the original Legend of Zelda, but I have to stick to that. It's what I truly believe in my heart, and I think it's where it belongs. Criminally underrated game, and I get why it's polarizing, but for me, it is that good. Alright. A Link to the Past. One of the best SNES games, came out shortly after the launch of the SNES. Incredible game. You can tell that they packed so much time and energy into it. Amazing soundtrack that was revamped. Awesome dungeons, great bosses, and great layouts. I think the game was a little bit too easy in some respects, but I think like the puzzle challenges and the dungeon layouts were fantastic. I also loved the sheer number of dungeons in this game, because not only did you have the light world where you completed, what was it, like 4 or so dungeons, but then you'd also have the dark world with, I think, 8 more, right? There was so much to this game beyond that too, because there were so many hidden items and hidden heart containers. Finding everything was a real joy, and I just thought that this one really is a complete package as far as a Zelda game goes. A lot of the fan base considers this the best one, and it's hard for me to disagree with that. So I'm going to rank it in the S tier. I really think it is that good, and I think I have to rate it better than Zelda to the Adventure of Link, because I just think this one, it appeals to all different Zelda fans, especially the ones that are alive at that time, and I think it's arguably, or probably is, the best 2D Zelda game ever created. So, The Link to the Past gets S tier. It really is that good. Alright, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. It was a good game, but it was on Game Boy. That maybe is its only downside. And I know some people that are probably watching this love Game Boy, they grew up with this, they loved it, but it really did have serious limitations. But this was done about as well as you could do an adventure game like Zelda on the Game Boy, and it was arguably the best Game Boy title ever. So it was a shorter experience compared to a lot of the other games that existed at that time that were adventures, again partially due to the hardware limitations, but it was good too. I don't feel like it had as good of a story as the previous Zelda games, and it just wasn't as complex. But it was good, and it was, you know, in the Game Boy black and white, if you call it black and white. So I think it was good, but it wasn't great. I think that I have to put it in the average tier, as when I think of this game, I do think of it as average. And I get that a lot of people will love this one. A lot of people have this one in their heart. It's part of their nostalgia growing up. But for me, this doesn't touch the enjoyment that I had out of the previous Zelda titles that I already ranked on this tier list. So for me, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening is an average ranking. Alright, Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time was very groundbreaking in the Zelda franchise because it was the first true 3D Zelda game. And at the time, this was much more controversial than you might think now, but turning a series like Zelda that had such a big fan base, even at that time, what was it, 1997, 1998, throwing them a curveball to some extent was pretty polarizing, kind of in the same way as Zelda to the Adventure of Link was on the NES. Some people didn't know what to expect about it. A lot of people thought just 3D games in general were fads. But this one has gone on to be recognized as one of the great Zelda titles. For me, I don't have quite the same love for it as many other people, but I will acknowledge this is a really good front-to-back Zelda game. It had good dungeons that made use of 3D pretty well. The aiming device on the controller was used in some dungeons, and the combat was pretty fluid, and it was pretty good for what it was. The lore was also exciting. You got to learn more about the Kingdom of Hyrule and Sheik, and the final boss fight was really great, I thought. There was also some extras in this game, you know, just like a lot of the other Zelda games, finding the heart containers and the Master Sword. Finding the Master Sword was really cool in this game. Maybe one of the coolest side quests that have ever existed in a Zelda game was in this one. I don't love it as much as my favorite Zeldas, but I have to, I think, put it as good. It's between good and excellent, but for me, it doesn't touch the original Legend of Zelda, so I think I have to put it at the good tier. That makes more sense to me, although I totally understand fans that would rank it higher than me. Alright, Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask was the second Legend of Zelda mainline title on the N64. Came out as the follow-up later in the life of the N64, and it's kind of a polarizing Zelda title too, because it it did innovate. It did change kind of the perspective because you were going back in time and kind of reliving the same time period, and that kind of impacted the story. What I did like about Majora's Mask is it used the same engine as Ocarina of Time, which was a good engine for all intents and purposes, but I liked how they used the items here, how you acquired new masks that allowed you to kind of have special powers or get to new places and new areas. The dungeons don't stick out as being so memorable to me, and definitely not, the final bosses and things like that. This one exists in a time where, Ganon was defeated at the end of Ocarina of Time, so he's not the ultimate enemy here, but it still tries to do some things that were risk-taking, and I appreciate that about him, but it just doesn't stick in my head as one of the best Zelda games, so I have to put Majora's Mask as... I think I'm gonna put it as... I think I'm gonna go good, but not as good as Ocarina of Time. For me, it's between average and good, but I like it better than Link's Awakening. I think it's a better game overall. There's a big, rabid fan base for this game that likes it even more than Ocarina of Time and some others, but I'm not one of those, so I think this is probably a fair ranking. Alright. Legend of Zelda Seasons and Ages. Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages came out on Game Boy Color. This tried a unique strategy of kind of making a dual game that kind of, revolved around a singular story. In Seasons, you could manipulate the seasons to your advantage, and in Ages, you could essentially time travel to your advantage, but the story was kind of in two pieces, so Nintendo was going for having the player complete both and being able to experience the entire story. It was pretty good. To me, it's just not as memorable as far as the story. They tried some new things, but I think they got into the territory of ensuring kind of repetitive gameplay because the mechanics between the two, outside of that fact of manipulating seasons or manipulating time, was essentially the exact same. But other than that, it was pretty formulaic in a good way for the Zelda franchise. You'd collect items, you defeat enemies, go through dungeons, and explore. So I like that they didn't reinvent the wheel and they tried something new, but again, it doesn't stick in my head as being the best Zelda games, and I think I would rate them about the same. I don't prefer either Seasons or Oracles to each other, but I still think I like them more than Link's Awakening, and I had to put them on average tier, so I'm going to put Seasons and Ages both on average tier, and I think this is the order I will have them. I think the Ages may have been a little bit better because the time travel and the relation to that story was a little bit better as far as I'm concerned. Alright, 8 down. So the next one is Four Swords, which came out as part of the same package as A Link to the Past did on the Game Boy Advance, if I remember this correctly. So anyways, Four Swords was an attempt by Nintendo to make Zelda into kind of a multiplayer game, and it did have something of a story around it. I think Link split into like 4 parts. They might have been elemental parts, and they definitely were represented by different color links, and people would connect their Game Boy Advance units to each other and be able to experience this adventure. It revolved around the Dark Mage Vati, from what I recall, and I really literally only played it once. The story seemed really bare bones and just kind of more of an excuse. It wasn't story focused, and it was very short, and I didn't get to finish this one and completely see the culmination of everything, but it wasn't memorable, and it was hard to find multiple people to even play this one in the first place in its original form. I think they re-released this and made it so there was a single player mode in maybe the anniversary edition or something like that, but for me, I didn't really dig it. It was a huge hurdle to even play this. I mean, even being able to find 3 other kids your age that had the game, had Game Boy Advance, had free time at that point to play, it doesn't seem like this was a big success for Nintendo. I'm going to put this at bad, just because, I don't even think I had fun with it at all, but let me know. If you're a purist that loved Four Swords, let me know in the comments how wrong I am, I guess. And now we get to Wind Waker, which was the first mainline Legend of Zelda game for the GameCube. Tons of hype surrounded it when they first unveiled the footage of it. it was super polarizing. It was very controversial for a time because they decided to take Zelda in a cel-shaded direction. And that was really a big departure compared to what we saw in, Ocarina of Time and some of the other Zelda games that were really popular up to that point. And some people loved it. Cel-shaded graphics were the rage. It was, a big part of a lot of television series and games that people liked. But it kind of made Zelda have kind of this atmosphere that was more childish, I think, or at least that was my impression at the time. I did buy this game. I had mixed feelings of it, but what I do remember is there was way too much time sailing between island and island, and in this game, some of the islands had almost no purpose, so it just seemed like they were constructing this world based upon exploration, and that's cool, but you'd run into places that weren't fruitful at all, and that was, kind of a drag. Also, I think there was only like 5 or 6 dungeons in this entire game, and I did not like that. I think that they should have had, every Zelda game should at least have 8 dungeons, if you're asking me, and it just seemed like it wasn't enough. I wanted more of the dungeons and less of the exploration. I also didn't go crazy over the cel-shaded graphics, it just isn't my thing. So Wind Waker has a lot of, people that love it, a lot of critics. For me, I'm somewhere in between, but I still think it's good, and I'm gonna put it above Majora's Mask, I think, but not as good as Ocarina of Time. I think it belongs in that good category. It's a good game, and it has a lot of fans. It's probably one of the best adventure GameCube games there is, and I think that's a fair place for it. Alright, Zelda 4 Swords Adventures on the GameCube. Another one that was kind of an odd departure from a lot of Zelda games. This one also tried to capitalize on multiplayer play, and each player, 4 players in total to play this game, had to have a GBA controller to play it. So there was a big hardware limitation here, and again, finding 4 people to do this together with GBAs. I think I played it twice, and there was a single player mode, but from what I remember, the single player mode absolutely sucked because you had to change between links, and it was just cumbersome to control all 4 kind of doing the same thing at one time, completing the puzzles. It just wasn't a good experience. This was made for multiplayer, and a lot of people didn't really get to even play it that way. Also, the story also revolved around Vati, who escapes, and just, again, the story wasn't very memorable. It seemed to kind of be an excuse for the 4-player gameplay, and I just didn't enjoy it that much. The Nintendo was going for something interesting, something new, kind of like they did in 4 Swords, and the GameCube was known for being a console that excelled in multiplayer games. But this one, it didn't work out so well, but I do think it was probably better than 4 Swords because at least you could play single player. But I'm going to put it as a D. It's a below average game, definitely a below average Zelda. Don't really recommend this one, and but if you feel otherwise, I'd like to hear from you. Alright, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. Really interesting one here because this one was actually developed by Capcom and licensed by Nintendo, but this one came out on the Game Boy Advance. In a way, I think this one is as close to A Link to the Past as any other Zelda game. It played a lot like that. The look of it, the feel of it, the overworld exploration. The story, again, it revolved around the Dark Mage Vati, and he turned Zelda to stone, and you met this talking cat called Eslo, and there were puzzles, dungeons, and I really liked the shrink mechanic that they added. Link was able to shrink and manipulate his size to get into certain areas and crevices. The only thing that I don't like about this was how short it was. I think there were only 4 dungeons, and they were really great, really well laid out, but there just wasn't enough. It seemed like this game ended too short, and I'm not sure if that's because of the GBA's hardware limitations, but I thought it was an extremely fun game for what it was. The story was a little simple, but again, I thought the gameplay was great because it really is the Zelda that's most like A Link to the Past compared to all the other Zeldas, I think. I think it's a really good game, but I can't put it quite in the excellent tier. I think I'm going to put it just below Wind Waker on the good tier. I think it belongs in good. This is a good game. It could have been so much better just if it was longer. I think it really had promise to be in the excellent tier if it would have had double the amount of dungeons. Are there any other Minish Cap fans? Let me know in the comments. I feel it gets really overlooked, and it's probably because of Capcom's involvement, but I thought it was generally really good. Alright, let's go to Twilight Princess. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess was first developed for the GameCube. Nintendo put years into the development of this game, and I can't tell you how excited for it that I was when I first saw the first trailer, because there was a special trailer, I forget if it was unveiled during E3 or some other time, that teased this, and it showed a more realistic, darker looking Link in Hyrule. And I was just floored. I thought this was so good. I just remember the feeling I had was, we're so back. Because that's what I thought about the Zelda franchise. We're so back with the dark style, the more realistic feel that I loved. It's what I really kind of envisioned Zelda 2, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link being, but put into a modern game. So I was really hyped for this thing. It got a few delays because they eventually decided to delay it enough so it could come out as a Wii launch title as well. And it was eventually released both on the GameCube and the Wii. I really enjoyed this game. I thought they did such a good job of dungeon design. Hyrule looks beautiful. I love the realistic dark feel. I liked the antagonist, Zant, and the story revolving around him. And, you know, I just thought there was a lot to love about this game, and how they integrated the controls into the Wii's controller and nunchuck really worked well. For completing dungeons and puzzles. And honestly, I didn't really like the Wii in general as a console that much, because I just thought it was, you know, it was too innovative. It was too futuristic, and I was just used to playing games with a controller. But this is a game that did the Wii controller with the nunchuck really well. Again, love the dark feel, love the dungeons. I love the story, and honestly, if this game would have ended without Ganon being in it, I probably would have been fine with that, but when he shows up, it really is a big surprise, and it was so cool back in the day when I first found that. I really love the Twilight Princess. I think it is by far the best 3D Zelda game ever, I think. So I'm going to put it in the S tier, below The Adventure of Link and below A Link to the Past, but I still think it's S tier. Again, I think it's probably the best 3D Zelda. I know that's going to be really controversial of a take. There's been a lot of good 3D Zeldas, but this is my favorite. I think it's withstood the test of time, and it deserves to be up there. Alright, the Phantom Hourglass. This one came out on the DS as a risk-taking adventure where Nintendo wanted players to utilize the DS hardware and the stylus that came with it into a Zelda game. So for this one, there were about 8 dungeons, I think. There was a Temple of the Ocean Palace or whatever that you had to go to collect different items to progress you through the story, and it was draining your life. The villain's a guy named Bellum, and you'd have to use the Phantom Hourglass to kind of protect you. And the problem I had was you had to go through lower floors in that dungeon over and over so many times in the game, but at the same time, there were some cool parts too. The game had, you know, more dungeons than were in Wind Waker, which is its prequel. This is the sequel to the Wind Waker. And it used a similar cel-shaded feel. I do think that the gameplay was a little repetitive, and I hated how the stylus operated. So, you know, it was kind of imprecise, and using it just didn't feel right. I really would have preferred a more standard, you know, controller-based Zelda. Maybe it was me getting too old at this time, but I didn't really like the feel of using the stylus for a Zelda game. But in some ways, I do think it was better than Wind Waker. Overall, though, I can't rank it quite as highly because of the controls especially, and the tedious, repetitive gameplay in that Temple of the Ocean Palace, I believe it was called. So I think that I have to put it probably on... I'm going to say it's the best of the average tier, is Phantom Hourglass. Some people really like it. I know that a lot of people like the ship upgrade mechanic that they added, which seemed to be more complex than Wind Waker, but this one just wasn't for me. I'll respect you if it was for you, but that's where I put it. Alright, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. From what I remember about this, Link was trying to stop the revival of an ancient evil being of some sort, and instead of using shipbuilding and the ship exploration that we experienced in Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass, in this one it was on train tracks. And I remember that traveling was a lot different. You were essentially limited to where the trains brought you, and that was about it. I never played this one, so I'm gonna have to put it in never played. If you have any opinions on this one, leave them in the comments, but for me, I just really can't have an informed opinion on it other than knowing what it was all about. I also know it used the stylus for the combat, just like the other games in the series, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that, so this one doesn't really intrigue me that much to play it now, but maybe I should give it a shot someday. And let's get to Skyward Sword, because Skyward Sword was the next mainline title for the Wii. Lots of hype surrounding it, a lot of people built it up. It was a different kind of Zelda game in that, story-wise, it visited Zelda's origin story, and I really like that about it. I've always been a fan of kind of the Zelda lore and the Zelda canon. This one brings you back to the very start, before there even was Ganon or Ganondorf. The ancient evil you're stopping in this one, or trying to stop, is the revival of a demon king called Demise, and Link goes through several different worlds to try to get there. Now this one was a lot more linear than basically every Zelda that came before it, as far as I'm aware, and I didn't really like that part of it. I'm fine if Zelda gets a little bit more linear than some of the most non-linear ones like Breath of the Wild, but to me, this was too much boxing the player in. I also didn't like the motion controls here because, again, I really like to play the Zelda series with a controller. The motions were imprecise. I don't think it was integrated nearly as well as, say, the Twilight Princess was. So I just feel like it has to get knocked for that a little bit. Also, there is a mid-section in this game where it was just, I felt like there was a few just retrieval quests that wasn't really advancing the story very quickly. And you would get pestered by those tips that come out. What was that, like Fee or Fi from this game? That would just interrupt the gameplay with tips that seemed obvious and not really useful. So Skyward Sword, I don't think it was great, but I also don't think it was as bad as some people think. I'm gonna put it in the good tier, but at the very end, I think I like Majora's Mask and all the other ones in that tier better. I think it deserves good. I could see it being like the best of my average tier too, but I'm just gonna put it in good because I think that makes the most sense. Alright, Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Now, this came out for the Nintendo DS in I think 2013 or 2014, somewhere around then. But I was really interested to play this because when I first saw footage and teaser trailers of it, it looked just like A Link to the Past, and when I played it, I was honestly pretty impressed. This game looks and feels a lot like a more advanced Link to the Past. It was overhead view, dungeons look similar, really good use of color and I think dungeon layouts. It also had an interesting twist where you could essentially complete dungeons in any order you wanted for the most part. And that was a cool idea that kind of harkened back to the original Legend of Zelda where you could mostly do that too. So I thought there were a lot of really good ideas in this one. And it really had a Link to the Past feel because I think it was technically the sequel to A Link to the Past. So a lot of the themes in it would be similar and a lot of kind of the storytelling devices and just the overall feel. So I really liked A Link Between Worlds. I think it's pretty underrated. So actually, I'm going to put this in excellent tier, but behind the original Legend of Zelda. I really liked it. Some people didn't think that the dungeons were as good or that it really lived up to the hype, but I really like this one. I love what Nintendo was doing, kind of going back to, you know, the Zelda game almost every fan from the 90s knows and love, and that's A Link to the Past, so that's where I'll put it. Triforce Heroes, though, I know next to nothing about, and I've never played it. I think it was another one of the games that had a multiplayer experience, and I think it was also on the DS, but I literally never played it, so I can't really weigh in on it. Is this one I should try? Knowing what you guys do about me and my preferences in the Zelda series, do you guys think I would like this one? Let me know in the comments. Also, Breath of the Wild. Highly anticipated Legend of Zelda comes to the Switch, the first mainline Zelda game on the Switch, and it really blew people away. The graphics are killer, it's super open-ended, lots of areas to explore. My criticism, I think, if there is any, is it's like almost too open-ended, which I know some people will love, but I think it also kind of borrows from a lot of kind of that Dark Souls feel where, you know, you're exploring all around, finding hidden passages and hidden areas. That was always part of the Zelda, but it's so broad here. And also they play with kind of attuning your weapons or armor to deal with certain locations. That was interesting. Story was pretty good in this one. I liked the fact that it was not too much of a departure from the Hyrule we know and love, but it did try some new and innovative things. I like Breath of the Wild. I can't rank it super highly. It just didn't touch me as well as maybe some other fans, but I'm gonna put it, I think I'm gonna put it in good. And I also need to do a mulligan here because I just think I need to put Ocarina of Time up into the second tier. I like it more than Link Between Worlds, I think. And Breath of the Wild should have my top spot on the good tier. I have Breath of the Wild somewhere between good and excellent tier, but I think this is where it belongs. And now it's time to talk about Breath of the Wild's sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom also had a ton of hype behind it. Coming out on the Switch, I think 2 years ago, I think it was 2023. This game was super hyped. I really loved the teaser trailer that I saw of it, and it really allows you to kind of go above and beyond in customization. You kind of build your own devices to circumvent challenges. Like, this game was as broad vertically as it was horizontally in terms of the world. You'd, you know, go up into the sky, do all sorts of interesting things. I liked the bonus dungeons that you could find and complete. There was a lot to this game that I think made it a little bit better than Breath of the Wild. I also enjoyed its story a little bit better than Breath of the Wild. I think that Nintendo consciously tried to do a more story-driven Zelda with this game, and I really appreciated that. And it was a good direction to go, I think, after Breath of the Wild. So I'm gonna have to put Tears of the Kingdom into my excellent tier as kind of the lowest rung here. I think that's where it deserves to be. I do like it more than Breath of the Wild, but not as good as A Link Between Worlds. So that's where we're putting Tears of the Kingdom. Now let's get to Link's Awakening, and this time I'm talking about the remake. Link's Awakening was remade a few years back. Based upon the original, almost all the look and feel is totally changed, but they did pattern it off of the kind of the same planning and, you know, areas. The dungeons were mostly modeled the same way I think they were in the original game. I'd never completed this one, but what I played of it I did like. I think the graphical style is too childish and too kiddie for my taste, but I do think it was probably better than, you know, the original one was. So I am going to put this one, I'm going to put it average, but the best average tier. I almost put it in good, but I don't think it touches these Zelda games. I think it's good and definitely a better game than its original, but I wish it would have been a little bit less bright and cheeky and childish. Otherwise, good game there. And the last one, Echoes of Wisdom, is the latest Zelda game where Zelda is actually the protagonist. Really the first time in a mainline Zelda title that that's the case, but I haven't played it, so that's the problem. Should I play this one, guys? Would I like this? Again, knowing what you do about me and what I've divulged on this tier list, should I play this game? Will I like it? And what's it like? Let me know. Never played. Alright guys, special bonus segment here because I thought it would be so fun to rank the Philips CDI Zelda games that Nintendo licensed out to Philips against the mainline Zelda titles. And if you aren't aware, Nintendo licensed the Zelda franchise in the form of 3 games to Philips, kind of as a return the favor after not allying with them to create a CD-based enhancement for the SNES, and these games have been panned. Nintendo wants to forget about them. They're never mentioned anymore, except for, you know, as far as internet lore, you can find some videos on them. But I have played all 3 of these games, and I want to rank them. So, Link is in 2 of them, and the main character is Zelda in the 3rd one. So, the Faces of Evil, the CDI Faces of Evil game, terrible voice acting, terrible controls, terrible exploration. It kind of looks a little bit like Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. It's kind of a side scroller, and you get kind of these cell-based cutscenes that are super cheesy and weird. Again, terrible gameplay, terrible controls. It has to go F as the worst Zelda game imaginable on this list. Wand of Gamelon, same sort of feel, same sort of style. You basically side-scrolled your way through the game. Terrible controls. There'd be places where it looked like you could jump and clear, you know, like some water, and you wouldn't be able to do it. Jumping up ledges was terrible. This is a horrible game. Never play it. Wand of Gamelon, maybe slightly better than Faces of Evil, but not as good as Four Swords. Zelda's Adventure. Alright, this one I thought was a little bit better than the other 2. This one, you are controlling Zelda as the main character. It's an overhead explorer, and it actually used some kind of interesting themes. In a way, it kind of reminded me of the King's Quest games for PC. It was explorative, you would search for hints in places, and the gameplay was quite a bit better than the other 2. Still, not a great game by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this one was at least respectable compared to the other 2 piles of crap that were the CDI Zeldas. So this one I'm actually going to put in the D tier as the lower rung in that tier. It's actually maybe worth poking around with if you're a big Zelda fan, but of course play all the other Zelda titles ahead of it, unless you're a glutton for punishment or just kind of like a Zelda historian and want to check it out. So that's where we are. There's the tier list. So here's my final tier list, guys, and what do you think? I think you guys can all tell it kind of reflects a Zelda fan that's really into the retro Zelda style, but not totally closed-minded to the new ones either. But I really want to hear what you guys think, what you would put as your S tier, and where you think I went wrong. Let me know in the comments below. So there it is, guys, the ultimate Legend of Zelda tier list. I'd love to know where you guys think I went wrong with this. Let me know in the comments, and also let me know if you like tier list videos like this. And until I see you next time, take it easy.